Welcome to the Pastured Pig Podcast, where we share the successes and challenges of raising pigs on pasture. We talk to producers all over the country, from small homesteads to large commercial pasture operations. Whether you're new to pastured pigs or have been raising hogs for decades, we hope you hear new ideas and new perspectives on pasturing hogs. Here's your host, Troy McClung.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Pastured Pig Podcast. I'm your host, Troy McClung. And normally at this point, this is when I'd say I'm really excited to have my guest on tonight. But this time, I'm not that excited. This time, the guest is actually going to be me. Now, it sounds a little self-serving, and I guess maybe to some degree it is. But I've had several people ask, hey, Troy, your host, would you mind just kind of giving us a little details of where you're coming from? We want to understand what's going on. The whole point in doing the podcast, of course, wasn't to make it about my setup and my experience and what's going on at Red Tool House, but I understand there's some credibility that needs to be established, or maybe just a point of reference. Every once in a while, I drop a bit of nuggets of what's going on at our place and our updates, but not really getting into details. Maybe it's best to do some background there, and just to explain that this is the disclaimer. I am by no means an expert in pastured piggery. I consider myself a new, learning new experiences all the time. We've been raising hogs for, I guess, going on 7 years now. So it's one of those things where we say, hey, I have some base knowledge, but there's a whole lot more I want to learn. And I think it's fair, since we've done all these interviews and just telling about different experiences, that I just share my experience. So a little different for me. I don't normally sit here and stare at a computer monitor and go over my own notes and orate that into a mic. So instead of trying to go back and edit out mistakes or flubs, I'm just going to plow through it because that's just what I want to do. I really don't like going back and editing a bunch of stuff when it comes to audio, and especially when it's me making stupid mistakes, because to me it all sounds stupid when I hear myself talk. You know how that goes. But so what I'm going to do is I'm not going to do something as cliche as actually ask myself my own questions, but I am using that list of questions as a process to go through, and hopefully I hit all the points that matter. And just kind of do a little background, little history of Red Tool House Farm, where we are with our pigs, what we've done in the past, and where we're headed. Again, I know I've teased that a little bit, that we're making some pretty good wholesale changes at Red Tool House when it comes to a pastured pig farm. I also have still a little bit of a head cold, so I'm going to try to keep from coughing into the mic. I'll avert my face when it comes to that. So just bear with me. I thought I'd be done with it by now, but nope. It's still around. Great New Year's gift I've been rocking here for a couple weeks now. Okay, so let's dive right in. So who am I, and what about the farm? Well, the farm is called Red Tool House Farm or Red Tool House Homestead. We kind of use those back and forth. Actually, if you want to get technical, it's Red Tool House Lumber Company and Farm is how I originally started the business many moons ago. And I'm not going to go back and give all that detail, but just the lumber company element was tied to the fact that I had a small sawmill, a bandsaw mill at the time in the early 2000s, milling my own lumber, had a wood shop, turning that into wood products, furniture, those type of things. So in my mind, it was kind of fun to call it Lumber Company and Farm. Now, what's funny, when I went to the state to actually register the business, and I told them it's Red Tool House Lumber Company and Farm, they're like, oh, so you're in the timber industry, so here's a boatload of paperwork you have to do, and here's, we need to check your workers' comp, and you do this, and this. And I was like, oh, wait a minute, I'm not really a lumber company. Like, but it says so in your name. It's like, well, that's just kind of a play on words. I'm a guy with a little sawmill, just kind of milling stuff here and there and turning it into furniture. And they're like, oh, well, you're not really a lumber company then. So it says it in the name, but it's not in the registration. Seceded from Virginia in 1863 and actually became its own state. So sometimes you'll hear when someone says they're from West Virginia and you ask them a question, oh, my cousin lives just outside of Richmond, and that person looks at you like you're an idiot. that's just the way West Virginians are. We're a little sensitive to the fact that, no, we've actually been our own state for quite a while now. So, yeah, don't make a Virginia reference when you're talking about West Virginia. And not to get political, but with all the fun stuff going in Virginia about Second Amendment, people are thinking, oh, wow, you guys got all kinds of crazy stuff to deal with when it comes to guns and all that type of stuff. No, different state, whole different issue. So anyway, wow, get down off your soapbox, Troy. So there's, so Southern West Virginia, just a commuting distance from our capital of our state, if that makes any sense. So in a major metro area, but still very, very rural. So the name, the reason why we have the name Red Tool House is our area was gas country, natural gas country. There was tons and tons of natural gas production in the area. On the back corner of my farm, at the we're very rough terrain, so that what we call the top ridge, the back ridge used to sit the Red Tool House that housed all the tools for the local gas company guys to come do well maintenance, to do pipeline work, all that type of stuff. So that tool house actually sat at the top of the ridge, and it was red. So that actually was picked up decades ago. And that's just how people referred to that. Oh, you just go out to the road to the Red Tool House. So you go out Red Tool House Road. And so we thought that was neat. It was unique. From my marketing experience, I thought, well, okay, that's something unique. We can maybe grab that and run with it. So that's why we have the name Red Tool House. Nothing any more clever than that. So as I mentioned, in southern West Virginia, our topography, we're technically the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains. If you go east in our state, you get into the taller elevations, you get in the more defined mountains that have these nice long mountain ridges and then these wide valleys. You think of Polyface Farm over in the Shenandoah Valley. You think of things like that, where these beautiful green valleys with these tall mountains on either side. That's not us. I always joke, if you wanted to try to figure out the topography of West Virginia where we are, take a piece of paper and just wad that paper up into a ball. Just crumple it up in a huge ball and then straighten it back out. Try to flatten it out the best you can. And that's the topo map of where we live in West Virginia. There's really no rhyme or reason. It really is just a series of wrinkles. So we have 100 acres. And that 100 acres is basically a valley. So if you imagine a stream that runs through the dead center of the property is longer than it is wide. So it's a stream that runs through the center of it. And on either side of the stream, of course, you have the hills going up. And in West Virginia, we have what we call benches. So instead of just being a incline at a specific angle that goes up to the top of the ridge or the top of the mountain, we have these benches. So it's almost like these natural terraces. Some can be 30, 40, 50 feet wide. Some are even bigger. And some are just wide enough that you could drive a four-wheeler or a small tractor around. So the 100 acres that we purchased was a farm at one point. It was kind of abandoned. And actually say, here we took over a farm that was abandoned for years. When we bought the land in 2000, it was absolutely gutted. There was an old farmhouse that was in total disrepair. Side of it was missing. A lot of garbage. You could kind of tell that the neighborhood had decided to use it for the public dump for a couple years. So it just brought their household garbage. It was my understanding at one time somebody tried to run a small wrecker service out of there. So there were car parts, there were cars, tons of tires, 200 and some tires we took off. So we spent the first 2 years cleaning up the property, and by cleaning, literally hauling garbage. Those semi-sized rollback dumpsters that come in, I can't even comprehend how much money I spent. Don't want to even think about how much money I spent in having those full hauled off to the landfill. So a lot of work put into that. Trying to see the diamond in the rough. It was all forested. Out of the 100 acres, we probably had 95 acres that was true Appalachian hardwood forest. So we did a very selective timbering process there to help generate income, of course, to buy, to cover the cost of the land. And it worked out pretty well for us. And I'm not going to get into detail of that. There's other ways that you can find information about how we purchased our land on YouTube. But so you just imagine this this valley. I always say it looks like a tube sock, or if you take a take an old athletic sock and lay it down. It's kind of got a dog leg right to it, or he's got a little bend in it. That's kind of what it looks like, but then lift the edges up and have the stream running through the middle of it. So it's a valley. It's 100 acres, most of it forested. I joke when people say, "Oh, 100 acres! Wow, man, you must love having 100 acres." Yeah, it's really nice, but there's only one place on the entire property that I can turn my truck and trailer around. Yeah, it's just not flat. If it was flat 100 acres, then oh my goodness, you can imagine what we could do with it. But that's what we have. That's what we've chosen, and you dance with who brought you, right? So what are we doing there when it comes to pastured pigs? Well, back in 2013, we decided we wanted to try to raise our own pigs. We'd already been playing around in what we call the homesteading world, raising chickens, trying to do a garden, learn more about where our food comes from. The typical thing. It's nothing new. You watch a documentary on Netflix, you're like, oh, I got to change my whole lifestyle. So, but I'd always grown up rural, always grown up playing in the woods, that type of stuff. So none of that stuff really scared me. And I like the idea of being more self-reliant. I was kind of leaning more towards loner prepper type of thing, and my wife was more of nutrition. The kids were born, the kids were new, so it was nutrition. Trying to raise our kids the best way possible, giving them the best fuel for their bodies, all that type of stuff. So we kind of came together. I was like, okay, this makes sense. Let's try this. So, ironically, the thing that got me interested in pigs first, we had chickens, and instead of looking at other ruminants or looking at other animals like ruminants instead of pigs, there was a podcast we used to listen to all the time. It was Chicken Thistle Farm podcast, and some of you guys may be familiar with that podcast. They're no longer podcasting, in fact, but there is some rumor that Andy may be coming back. But they would kind of document their endeavors with raising pigs on pasture and some of the other things they had going on, and like, wow, okay, these guys, this husband and wife really make this sound doable. Now they had some challenges and things like that, but to me it was like, wow, okay, this sounds exciting. It sounds like it's something that would work on our land. I don't have all this open pasture that I could go out and get a couple head of cattle and not be feeding hay 9-10 months out of the year. The pigs can go through the forest. We can feed. We can do those type of things. We can do this, and I can afford the fencing. Fencing to me seemed to be a lot cheaper for pigs than it would be to say going out for something for a big goat area or big multiple cattle pastures with high tensile wire and all that type of stuff. So that first got my attention and drew me to pigs. And big fan of bacon. This is why, if you've seen my YouTube channel, you can tell Troy doesn't shy away from the bacon. In 2013, it's just one of those things. What do you do when you decide to get into pigs? Well, naturally, you open up the ad bulletin, or I guess now it'd be Facebook Marketplace. You just go anywhere you can find any general listings, and you find the first person that has pigs to sell. And you buy those pigs and bring them home. That's obviously not what I'm recommending, but that's what we did. I found a farm that was about an hour away. The guy had some pigs, didn't know anything about them. I knew they oinked, and they had 4 legs, and they were still moving when I went to get them. So that was really all I was looking for. And so show up, I buy 3 piglets just at weaning age. So 3 gilts. Going back and looking at him, 2 of them were primarily Hampshire. They were the white belted Hampshire, and then one was blue butt landrace kind of thing going on there, but a longer pig, flop-eared, whitish pink pig. Brought the 3 of them home. Actually brought them home in a dog crate in the back of my wife's Xterra. And my goodness, that hour drive all the way home, that's between the squealing and the projectile defecation in the back of the car. She was really impressed with pigs. So fast forward, we raised those 3. The whole gimmick there was the idea there was to see if I could raise 3 animals without killing them. I raised those 3 with the idea that one we were going to process for consumption that following year for ourselves, and the other 2 we would breed and then try to create a breed line there. And again, looking back in hindsight, it's like, there you go, just getting garbage genetics, and are you really going to be able to fix and have something great there? But we pushed on and actually had some successful litters. But seeing now that that's something that we wanted to change in the future. So we go through this first year, raise our pigs. Everything works fine. We go to do the AI on the 2 that we kept, and we named those 2. So that was Abigail and Molly. So Abigail and Molly, Molly was the landrace bluebutt pig, and Abigail was one of the Hampshire. We kind of said we're having a beauty contest. The one that looks like it has the best conformation is the one that stays to breed. The other one goes to the processor. So one lost out. So it came time to breed, and instead of, at that time, listening to Chicken Thistle Farm, they were always AI, and I really like the idea of AI, I like the control over it. They made it sound very easy to do. So that was the route I wanted to go. I didn't want to mess with a boar. There was all kinds of reasoning behind that, a justification in my mind. Didn't want to have to feed an extra mouth, didn't have to worry about keeping them separate, didn't want to worry about piglets when I didn't want piglets. I could mark heat cycle. I should know exactly when they're going to farrow. Haha, funny story there. All those type of things. So we went with the AI route. I was getting my semen from Shipley's. They were handling it really well. Cost was great, all those type of things. And we were successful. So the first breeding of Abigail and the first breeding of Molly, I had 2 perfect litters, literally. So Abigail, she threw 10 piglets, not a single loss, not a single crush. So 10 solid, viable piglets that we finished. Mercy farrowed about 15 hours later, and she had 12. Pigs looked exactly like her, identical. It was hilarious because I actually bred them with Duroc and from Shipley's, and so the pigs from the Hampshire from Abigail, they came out different colors. They were still belted, but they came out with different colors. You had some Duroc influence there, definitely. But man, the landrace bluebutt mix, Molly, all 12 of her pigs came out just looking exactly like her, flop-eared, white, pink, whatever color you want to call that, and identical, not a spot on them anywhere. So in my mind, I'm thinking, this pig raising thing, this is easy. So didn't have any crush, didn't have any stillborn, nothing. So we go from 2 pigs to then having 22 plus the 2 females, the 2 sows on farm. I'm like, wow, this is great. So at that point, I immediately get into pork sales, and I was thinking that was a direction I wanted to go. Wanted to sell. Obviously wanted to have unlimited supply of pork here on the farm, but also wanted to provide cuts for my friends, and that's when I started. Obviously taking deposits on wholes and halves of the pigs. Not really getting into cuts at that time, just dealing with wholes and halves. So that worked out well. And again, I'm not going to go through the whole life story there. We just kind of got in a cycle of doing that. A couple years later, decided to maybe the next year decided to do cuts, providing cuts of individual cuts of the pork. So you're trying to figure out that balance. The cash flow associated with instant cash flow from selling a whole and a half and needing only a small amount of customers to the value added retail costs or benefits of selling cuts, but then cash flow when it came to production costs and processing costs that I would have to absorb, and then multiple customers, more customers needed to be able to sell that product. And that's a discussion actually for another whole podcast that we'll probably get into at some point. Weighing the benefits of wholes and halves versus cuts when it comes to cash flow and sales. So really just turned out well for us. I would always sell out. Obviously, bacon was a no-brainer. In fact, I just kept raising the price of my bacon, got to where I was about $8.50 a pound on bacon. Just had a good customer base. And to kind of dovetail into this, so a question that I obviously ask all my guests, well, are you doing this by yourself? Are you doing it on the fly as a primary income, or do you have an all-farm job? Well, at Red Tool House, the way it works is Kelly she retired when our first son was born. She decided she wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. She was actually an accountant and did quite well at that profession, but she wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. So in 2002, she officially hung up her employment hat and went to what I consider a harder job of staying home and taking care of the kids and homeschooling. So that first child is now 18, finishing up his high school year of homeschooling. We have 2 boys. So the 4 of us Kelly and me and the two boys, we obviously are the farm hands. They help out, but the pig maintenance, pig chores are primarily my responsibility. I have an all-farm job. I am self-employed. I own a marketing company, so that obviously helps me do some things. Obviously, the reason why I'm talking right now into a microphone and all this equipment is because it's part of my marketing company. It's not like I had to go out and buy all this stuff specifically to start a podcast. So there's some overlap there. And of course, being self-employed allows me to have that freedom to, okay, I'm not working at the office today, I'm going to work on the farm, or vice versa. I'm not messing with the farm today, I'm going to the office. So there's a balance there. A day job, obviously, the day job still funds the farm. The farm is not is not completely self-supporting. The day job, of course, provided all the infrastructure. If we look at pork sales covering the feed costs and covering some of the pig-related infrastructure, then yeah, it could be profitable. It hasn't been the last year just because of issues we've had with farrowing. But at that time, when I'm selling 15 to 22 hogs, the income from that definitely covered the feed costs, the labor costs, the equipment costs, and the fencing, those type of things. So that worked out well. It became profitable for us. And of course, the day job gave me the experience and the ability to market my product, establish a customer base so I could sell said product. Alongside of the day job of the marketing company and of course the farm, we decided to start a YouTube channel several years ago. Honestly, the motivation to starting the channel was I wanted a visual for my customers to be able to see, hey, if I'm going to buy pork from Troy or eggs or chicken, because we do multiple things there, then I want them to be able to see how I raise things on the farm. I want them to see the farm. If they can't come out and walk around on it, at least they can go see these videos. So it's a trust factor that I was trying to build. Well, that was the primary focus. The channel took off. It got some traction. And so now it's kind of become its own little entity. So looking at it from a business perspective, the farm produces farm products, chicken, eggs, pork, and has its own little business sector there that we manage profit and loss through there. The YouTube channel now has its own sector that manages profit and loss. So we see the income that comes from there, and of course the all-farm day job. So there's three primary income streams for Red Tool House family, and we have smaller conduits of income that fall under those three areas. But that's kind of what we're doing. That's how we have structured our setup. So as I mentioned, going back to our pigs, so over the last 7 years, we've just kept breeding those lines. So Abigail and Molly retired. Her daughter, Mercy, we bred her for a while. She had some good litters. Then we kept her daughter, who was Matilda, and Matilda actually, she only farrowed once and had a total loss. She went early and she passed what looked like a plate of lasagna. It was a mess, and so we retired her. Abigail, she produced several good litters. She had she had one of her piglets we kept as a gilt and bred her. Her name was Meredith. She did really well. She had some great litters, and so we kept her around. In fact, she is still, as of this date, is still standing on the farm right now. At least she was this morning, standing on the farm. She had a daughter who we called Hoss, who just had an incredible conformation. This pig was an absolute tank. But I kept her around just because of her conformation. But she had a very sporadic heat cycle. Could not figure it out. At times she would come into heat but never stand. And so I was really going to give up on her. In fact, it was ready to send her to processing. I just happened to be breeding my other two. I was trying to, keeping 4 breeding sows was my game plan, and rotate, breed 2 one time, breed 2 the next time, kind of back and forth. And so I'm there with my Shipley supply. I'm breeding the 2 that I want, and look over, and here's Hoss standing there in incredible stand. I mean, just locked up. I couldn't believe it. I'm like, wow, okay, well, I'm gonna take some of this product and I'm going to try to breed her because I want to see if she's going to be worth keeping or not. Well, she bred, she settled, had a horrible farrowing. She was, and we actually did a video about this. She was my first major loss on the farm. In some of those litters after the first ones, we had, some crushing, we had some stillborn. So it wasn't like I was doing perfect litters the entire time. But Hoss just had some concerns there that she had a really violent farrowing. Actually, I had to go in and pull pigs, and she just never recovered from that. She never was able to get back up from that, and so she passed. There was obviously a death issue there. 3 of her piglets survived. We bottle fed those and donated them to a local nonprofit that we've been helping get their agricultural thing there, addiction recovery, homeless shelter type thing. They have a lot of land, so we're helping them get established there. So we donated those pigs once we weaned them from the bottle. That's a whole different story. But so kind of discovering things are showing up in my genetic line that, okay, there's some issues here. The Shipley's semen that I'm getting, these good quality boars, are just not overcoming some of the genetic issues that I had. Now, there's also, it wasn't just genetics, of course. There's, I'll be more than happy to take the blame. There's farmer blame when it came to conditions and farrowing conditions and those type of things. Looking back in hindsight, my pigs were definitely overweight. The ones that had farrowing issues, there's just, in Appalachian forest, there's just so much forage, man. And it just blows my mind. And you look at a pig every day, and if you don't start taking notes and these type of things, you don't realize how big these pigs get. And they just keep putting on until you go back and you look at old pictures, you go back and look at some of your data, and you're like, oh my goodness, this pig is huge. And when I had successful farrowings, they were a lot lighter in weight, a lot less fat on them. Just a more healthy pig when it came to birthing. So I've learned a lot from that, and that's something where, and I'll get to that here at the end. We talk about how that's affected our change in the direction we want to go moving forward in 2020. So as far as our setup goes, the challenge in our property, of course, is the topography. But there's pros and cons. I don't have the luxury of doing a rotational pasture system that makes sense. I mean, you see some of these plans out where people are using the wagon wheel method, or these paddock systems that are nice and square, and you've got a common area in the center that's your feed and your water source, or when you go to Polyface Farms, you see how Saladin has his paddock set up with a center alley, and so he just moves them around. I think he has 12 to 14 paddocks, and he just moves them around, no problem, and then has a center road where he can come load and drive right up if he needs to. Well, his land, even though it's in a mountain area, his land lays so well that he can do that. In my situation, I've taken the stream and used it as a dividing line. So I've got what I call our south pasture and our north pasture, and altogether about 4 or 5 acres. That changes a little bit as we move some things around and try to build infrastructure. But kind of having that split in half, so maybe 2.5 acres per, or maybe south pasture may be a little bigger than the north pasture, and just rotating back and forth on those two is what we did. A lot of it's forested, some of it's clear. We're actually trying to clear as we go. In fact, that's kind of the joke that I say. Our valley runs east-west, so my pigs are my pioneers. They are to head west, young man, and clear land. So as we move, expand our pastures, we're expanding on that westward side and allowing pigs access to more forest area, or I'll clear an area, then move the pigs into that area. Doing a good job, of course, clearing out the underbrush, finding all the forage. They love poison ivy. They love greenbrier. They love all those small saplings. Really tear into that. And that's the thing I've noticed too with my genetics, going with these more production type pigs. Instead of heritage breed, some that are more geared toward pasture. These pigs definitely are harder on our pasture. They do a lot of rooting, so I have to control that, keep them out of certain areas, block off areas that they're just wailing on too much, or come in with a tractor and try to mitigate some of the damage they've done. So that's a bit of an issue. So right now we do have a rotational process. It's just trying to figure out how to bust up those paddocks appropriately with the topography we have. I mean, there's definitely parts on our mountainside where it's everything you can do to walk up the side of it, much less, set fence or, try to drive a piece of equipment up to deliver feed. So there's some method to our madness. We let our pastures actually be defined by the benches and by the roads that I've cut. That was the beauty of having the property timbered back in 2000 selectively, is a nice road system cut throughout the property. So I can get almost anywhere on my property with a side-by-side or a tractor. Not necessarily taking my pickup truck up there, but I can get anywhere on the property with either the side-by-side or the tractor. So it gives me access. It's just the convenience of, you really want to have your fence going alongside a road, not down the side of almost a vertical 70-degree angle slope. That kind of makes things a little tough. But there's times that we have to have that. The creek, of course, provided water. I do now have impoundments, small impoundments in various areas. That's the beauty of West Virginia. We get tons of water, so there's never really an issue when it comes to water. Fencing process, I'd mentioned this earlier, and that's what attracted me when listening to the Chicken Thistle podcast, attracted me about pigs. It's like, well, a strand of electric will keep a pig at bay. And since we're so rural and I don't have local neighbors to worry about, that's what I started out with. I literally went around, again, there's all kinds of things I learned from this, but literally went around sticking in T-posts, step-in posts, even splitting my own wooden fence posts to set in the pasture, and putting one insulator about 8 inches off the ground and stringing one strand of 17 gauge wire all the way around. So I'm like, bang, 5 acres. I got that done in a weekend or a week's worth of work, putting all that stuff together. And thought, this is a piece of cake. Buy a simple fence charger down here at Tractor Supply, I'm good to go. Obviously, things have evolved since then, but still, to some degree, that's true. The fencing is much, much cheaper than if I was doing all that in woven wire or was putting 5-strand high tensile to keep a cow in. Since then, I've evolved away from these 17 gauge because we have so many white-tailed deer in our area. When they blast through the fence, they don't jump it, they just go through it, and it just severs the fence. So there's so many places where it's broken. I've noticed if I go up to 14 gauge, when the deer go through it, they don't sever the fence itself. They usually blow an insulator apart or tear it away from, knock a T-post over or something like that. So that's a little easier to repair than having all these different splices that you got to fix in your wire. So that's kind of our layout. Electric fence, 2 main paddocks. As we move west, as we clear more land, our ideal plan is go further west, move the pigs further and further away from the front of the property. They go up the valley, and then as I cleared land, we're trying to do more of a silvopasture type thing. So leaving a lot of the protein producing trees, the oaks, the hickories, the walnuts, the beech, stuff that produces great protein, but thin out some of the scrub stuff, or even thin out some of those key species so that there's enough sunlight to be able to get good pasture grass growing. And I really like what we've got put together so far. It's just one guy with a chainsaw on 100 acres. I couldn't cut down these trees in 2 lifetimes. So just seeing how that goes. I want to refrain from bringing in a piece of heavy equipment and ripping through the land. Erosion, treetops, all those type of things, have to be dealt with. So there's a pro and con to all of that. But that's our game plan. Pigs go west, and then maybe we bring in some ruminants. We're really looking at highland cattle maybe into 2020, beginning of 2021, and to accentuate what's going on at the farm. So, I talked about our income and how we sold wholes and halves and then eventually went to cuts. And this is something that I'd stick a pin in and do a whole nother podcast discussion about. Maybe it's the guest, maybe it's me pontificating and sharing experiences from others. But it was really one of those deals where I wanted the pig business to be profitable. It for me to do this on a scale larger than just raising a couple hogs for myself, for the family. If I was going to breed and have the opportunity to have large litters, and to me a large litter is anything over 10 pigs per sow on the property, then I needed to have an income stream. I didn't want to get stuck with all these pigs and then turn around and be selling piglets, flooding the market with weaned piglets that you see sometimes for $25 or $30 because somebody's just trying to get rid of them. I wanted to have a customer base established that I could sell a finished product. To me, that's the real value when you value add something to the point that you've got a finished product that has higher dollar value to it. So worked really hard building a customer list, establishing that samples, going to different types of sales, delivery systems that we put in place, packets, bundles, all those type of things. So got to where that it became very profitable for us. In fact, I would, at the end of the year, if we were doing a large chunk of wholes and halves, man, you get flush with cash at that point. And if that cash had carried you through from last year, then you're net positive. So that helped us reinvest back into the farm, whether it was adding a piece of equipment, upgrading some things. All of that came into play. Very handy. I do confess, one year it actually helped go, have a nice vacation. So that's what I always tell the boys when they're grumbling and complaining about being out knee deep in mud. It's like, remember, these pigs sent us to this place one year on vacation. So keep that in mind. So income was key for us. To me, it's not the primary cornerstone of why we do pigs. But to me, it has to be profitable. It has to at least cover its costs, or I'm just going to go get feeder pigs in the spring and raise them out and butcher them just for our personal consumption. I enjoy breeding. I haven't been that good at it here lately. If you guys watch the channel, you'll see all of those videos discussing that. So I've been a little discouraged there, but really enjoy the breeding of it. To me, that's the neat thing, is looking at the genetics, looking at what you can produce, looking at what comes out, what hits the ground, and what's viable. And there's nothing more fun than piglets. Piglet season, man. That's when you have a really good time and you're enjoying that, and that's when all your friends want to come out because everybody wants to see piglets. So all those things that go along with that. So looking forward at Red Tool House, our plan in the future, in fact, at the point of recording this, our plans are going to shift gears, are really going to go into effect here at the end of this week. So you guys have heard on the podcast before David Crafton from Six Oaks Farms. He is bringing us some pigs. In fact, at the end of this week of recording this, we should be receiving 14 pigs from his genetic line. And what we're getting is one boar. Yep, that's right. I'm going boar. So we're going to try a boar, and he's going to be young. He's not going to be pitching yet. So he's not going to be ready to hit the ground. But he's getting a boar, and we're getting 13 other, we're 14 pigs total, one boar. David selected at least 3 gilts that are his level of confirmation. He say these are the 3 you'd want to breed. He said, and then there's some intermediate gilts you may want to look at. But what my plan is to hold a boar and 3 gilts for breeding, and then that leaves us 10 to finish this year because I didn't have any piglets in a farrowing this year. My customers have been waiting too long. I'm afraid of losing some of my customer base because I haven't been able to have any pork products. So we have taken all of our sows except for Merida, and we sent them off to processing. So we kind of retired that entire genetic line. The reason why we kept Merida is, quite frankly, she wouldn't get in the trailer. She had a bad experience with trailers. She's smart enough, she knows. So she's hanging out on the farm right now. She will be on the processing list, and it'll probably be a self-processing at Red Tool House. We'll probably do that, and that's again a whole nother discussion. But actually, as I'm thinking, I kind of like the idea of keeping her here just when we introduce these new pigs, simply because I'm hoping that as an alpha, as a large 600-pound sow, hopefully she doesn't knock anybody around and kill anybody. But my plan is that hopefully she will kind of show them. My fear is these pigs have been trained in electric from David's farm, but obviously they're new to my farm, and I'm not used to bringing in animals from outside. So I've spent all the last couple of weeks, tuning up our fence. I've taken things for granted. Even when fence is down, our pigs don't leave. All those type of things. So I've gone back and reinforced, redone a bunch of fence, and I really want it to be as secure as possible. But I'm hoping that they will see Merida as an example. Hey, here's where we go to sleep. Here's where we go to eat. Here's how we do this. And not just say, oh, look, a huge valley full of mast. We're just going to hit the hillside. So that's kind of my self-justification as to why Merida wasn't on the trailer. So I'm hoping that's going to work out to our advantage and not to our disadvantage. We'll share that. So we'll get into more details as we see how that goes. Again, it's as Granddad always taught me, he's like, don't catch your chickens before they hatch. So I'm not going to put too much into all these big plans until David's pigs are on my farm. But really like working with him, really like his attitude, really like his approach to farming when it comes to pigs. So I'm really excited to see how his pigs can flourish on our farm. So, seeing that, so in 2020, looking at, I'm new to a boar, so I've got to figure out how I'm going to manage that and how that comes into play. And then getting a breeding schedule figured out, all of those things obviously are going to be new for us. So I almost feel like I'm starting over. I've got the experiences that I have, but there's going to be a whole lot of new experiences that I'm going to have to navigate. So it's going to be interesting. And like I said, we'll document that on the channel, but I'll also come back and do updates as we do the podcast in the future, Lord willing. So looking past 2020, our plans are really just, I'd like to get into a groove of producing good quality pork in wholes and halves and cuts, and utilizing the genetic line that David sent to just breed good quality stuff there. May sell a wean piglet from time to time here or there, depending on how these litters do. Really not the top of my list, but just really looking at producing a good quality item. Hoping that these more pastured-based pigs will be easier on the pasture system, still do some good forage, still do some clearing that we need them to do, but just be a more well-rounded pig. So really looking forward to that. I don't know that I would ever say that my goal would be for the pastured pig operation to be as large as some of the people that we've interviewed. And that becomes a primary source of income. That is the job of Red Tool House and Kelly and I. I don't know that it's where I want to go. I really like everything that I do. I love doing my day job. I love helping people market. I love raising pigs, but I also want to raise some of these other animals and do more there. There's things not even related to pig farming that we want to do with our property. We're big believers. We're Christian. We have a Christian faith that we follow, and I want to take a good chunk of my property and invest in building a marriage retreat. So people that are marriages are struggling, they can come spend some time on this retreat and hopefully be able to heal from whatever is ailing them, or just simply get some time away. We live in a dead zone. There's no cell service. There's no internet. There's nothing out there. So it becomes a nice way to unplug, but we're still only 30 minutes from the capital of our city, of our state. So there's stuff we want to do there. And again, it has nothing to do with pig farming. But that's some of the influences that say, well, I don't want to be a full-time pig farmer. I do love pigs. I enjoy them thoroughly. To me, they're the most fun farm animal that I've experienced so far. But they are not going to be my primary focus or my sole focus of what goes on our property. So as we grow, I don't know that I'll be looking to do litters larger or look at having herds larger than 30 pigs. Again, maybe if sales take off like crazy, then maybe we'll address that. But to me, 30 and under is a really good number for us and allows me to do the other things that I want to do. Well, the closing question is funny. I'm looking at my list here. I'm at the end of my diatribe, my discussion of what we've got going on, and I always ask everyone this closing question about what's the best experience or my favorite part of raising pigs on pasture. So I guess it's fair for me to ask myself that. To me, the best part of raising pigs is really the whole 9 yards. I mean, everything. Now, granted, when I go out and discover there's been a farrowing issue, or a pig's gotten crushed, or a pig didn't settle, that's a drag. Or just those things. When you have bad days, it is what it is. But man, I just love every aspect of it. I enjoy start to finish. Piglets on the farm are really a blast. I enjoy just sitting and watching the piglets play. I mean, I can recount hours of just sitting in the barn watching these little turkeys run around. They're just hilarious. All the way up to these larger sows, just working with them, their personalities. They follow me here, follow me there. They have personalities. I think they have more personalities than most dogs. Definitely have personalities better than most people. But just a really neat animal to watch. They have value on our property, not only in what they produce in their death, but in the production that they do while they're there, keeping areas clear, cleaning up the forest area for us, producing soil as they turn their manure and these things into this red clay that we have, and we start to see soil building there. So I really enjoy every aspect of it. And of course, there's nothing more satisfying than sitting down at dinner and having a pork chop, or breakfast having a nice piece of bacon or sausage, and think, this is something that came from my farm. This is something that my hands had a hand in producing. And it just gives me a better respect for it. I don't like to see any of that go to waste. We use every inch of stuff. I don't like my boys, having a piece of pork left on their plate. Say, son, you know how hard it was for us to raise that. Eat that. So that's what I like about raising pigs on pasture. It's just the entire process. Even the hard days, it's part of it. It makes you appreciate the good days. Well, I hope that was somewhat entertaining. I realize that I've gone as long as I go when I interview people. It just shows you that I can talk, and there's never been an issue with me not having something to say. My wife would agree with that too. So if you want to know more about our farm, then you can go to redtoolhouse.com. We do have our website there. That's also where the Pastured Pig podcast link is, and I have those two things integrated right now. At some point, we may look at splitting that out and having a standalone website for the podcast. Not a big priority for me right now. Feel free to comment, send me a message if you think that should be something I need to do. But right now, I think all living together is fine. But you can find details about our farm, a little bit of history there. And of course, you can, if you really want to get deep in the weeds with us, our YouTube channel, I think we're about 380 videos now. Again, not all related to pig farming. It's more of our broader homesteading scope. But there is a boatload of content out there if you so dare. Check that out. We have a Facebook page, Red Tool House on Facebook, Red Tool House on Instagram, so you can check us out there. We try to keep those things pretty current. Well, this is a part where I bid you adieu, and I just really appreciate everybody that listens to the podcast. It's really fun meeting new people and talking to people. Learn so much from you all. We've got some interviews coming up where we're going to get a little more topical based, but I still want to talk to you, those that are just starting out or just want to share their experiences with raising pigs on pasture, whether it's at a professional level, a big production level, or homesteading level, just to raise enough food for yourself. Well, I pray everyone has a great week. You get to spend some quality time out in the pasture with your pigs. All right, take care.
We hope you have enjoyed this episode of the Pastured Pig Podcast. To learn more about our podcast, or to submit topics or recommend guests for future episodes, visit redtoolhouse.com.